My name is Peter Millman. I am part of PACE, People's Action for Clean Energy. And I want to welcome you all to the second meeting of 10-4-CT. And yeah, 10-4-CT, Thermal Energy Networks for Connecticut. We formed 10-4-CT largely because of the provision within SB4, a bill passed earlier this year by the Connecticut State Legislature. And that provision was for a thermal energy network grant program. That is a grant program to help municipalities and actually other possible entities to do feasibility studies and perhaps even design development studies about the possibility of doing thermal energy networks in towns. There's nothing about 10-4-CT that is in opposition to utility-led thermal energy networks, but we feel that we can have the most impact on community-led ones. Unfortunately, that thermal energy network grant program was not funded. But those of us who formed 10-4-CT, which include Bernie Pelletier from PACE and Leanne Allen Jacobson and Representative Steve Winter, we felt that there's no need to wait until next year for the grant program to be funded. There's plenty to learn right now. There's plenty to, we need to form a community and, to set in motion what we need to do once the grant program is in place. Plus, there's a good opportunity for us as 10-4-CT to advocate for the funding of the grant program. So that's why we're here. We have a website and we have a Google group, which you're welcome to join. And we will be doing monthly meetings. We have really more possible speakers than we can accommodate over the next few months, but we will be doing that and we'll keep you informed. So I just see that Representative Susan Johnson from Windham, which is a neighboring town to where I am, and she has been is here, and she has been a very strong supporter of thermal energy networks in general and the Thermal Energy Network grant program in particular. Susan, do you want to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you so much. And thank you for organizing a thermal energy network group. Nothing gets done without a group. And I've always, for a long time, wanted to do more thermal energy at the state level. I wondered why DEEP didn't actually include that in some of the options for sustainability, because it's right here in our backyards. It's right here in our sewer pipes and pipes that are in existence. If we want to be environmentally sustainable, have environmental justice communities, what we need to make sure we do is address through
What are you doing?
Treatment pipes. I'm sorry.
I think anybody who's not speaking, if you could put yourself on mute, that would be great. Thanks. Sorry, Stu.
No worries. So anyway, I just am very excited about doing this organization because we need a big group in order to address the access to grant funding. Now, municipalities, the reason I helped structure the way it's written is because we want to limit access to geothermal networks through the Public Utilities Control Authority. You want to make sure that municipalities that have resources like Willimantic has sewage treatment pipes, has natural gas pipes, has piping that can actually, together sustainable access to geothermal networks. My town manager, in fact, has got experience with creating with sewage treatment pipes. They have to be the first step, and then we could see how much it would cost to implement geothermal network with existing infrastructure that we have. And I think if we are able to go through our state and go to the communities that have these sewage treatment facilities, then what we need, analyze this in terms of access to resources all throughout our state. But I'm thrilled to actually do it right here in Win, because I would love to be able to create a geothermal network. And I have to say, I was looking for a partner to work with on this. And when Representative Winter came and was elected, and he had as you know already, I'm sure, because you had your first meeting with him, he actually had created a geothermal network in the New Haven rail station that he received federal funding that Trump tried to take away, but they went back after it. In any event, I was able to work with him, and we helped make sure that geothermal was included in our energy bill this year. So I'm very excited that it's there. The opportunities are there. Now we need the networks. Maybe I'll go and actually see some of the places where they already have geothermal network and visit them and find out how they work. And also, I would love to have our town manager come and talk to this group as well. So thank you for letting me say a few words, and thank you for your work. And I'll be glad to work with you to help create more people that can be part of our geothermal
Great.
networking. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan, and I really appreciate your support. So I'm going to go to introduce Reverend Ives shortly. I just want to mention that as time permits, Leanne is going to give a short presentation at the end about some Department of Energy case studies of ground source heat pump projects. Anyways, without further ado, I just want to say a couple of words about Reverend Ives. He spent 14 years earlier in his career, early in his life at the American Red Cross. He later spent 18 years at the business school at UConn in Storrs, where I happen to live. And what I gleaned from reading about Reverend Ives is that what connects the different parts of his life has been the desire to create community. At the business school, he was in charge of alumni relations, which is a community, and he created a program to help enhance the life of students, particularly freshmen within the school, in terms of their professional, academic, and social lives. And he seems to have carried on that work of creating community as the rector of the St. Peter San Pedro Episcopal Church in Salem. So without further ado, Reverend Ives.
Thank you. It's great to be with you all. I appreciate you giving me the invitation to speak. And I guess I know it's kind of strange that what's this rector of an Episcopal church doing talking about thermal energy networks, but we're hard pressed by our situation and wanted to do something about it. And this was the gold standard to go for. And so we're wholeheartedly on a journey to achieve a thermal energy network in our community. And initially it started just for the church. If some of you have read the article that appeared in the Boston Globe recently, we had this knock on the door from National Grid, our electrical and gas provider, in this case gas, and they said, we have the right to change your meter. And so they did so, and the bill went instantly from very low, $100 a month or so, to $3,000 a month in one fell swoop. And so that's not sustainable for an old church. And we happen to be one of I think it's the 8th oldest Episcopal church in this Commonwealth. And we have a building that's 192 years old, and it's just a big place to heat. So we wanted to do something about it. I'm a green conscious kind of guy. I drive an electric car. I have solar panels. When I lived in Brooklyn, Connecticut, I had solar panels on my house, and I do now. And so we wanted to be proactive. And so we started to think about geothermal. And as God would have it, there was a grant that came out that was coming from HEAT, H-E-E-T at the time. And they were doing a Kickstart feasibility study grant offering for Massachusetts communities and organizations that were interested in exploring thermal networks. And they actually had a conversation with me and said, you're ideal because you're in an inner city, you've got a Justice 40 neighborhood that you're working with, because we are a multicultural bilingual church. Everything we do is in both languages. And but we think you could do bigger than what just helping the church. And couldn't you extend this out into your neighborhood? And we'd like to help you explore that concept. And so a paradigm shift occurred, and we were wholeheartedly willing to look at, could we go beyond St. Peter's and help to green the neighborhood and bring us a lot closer to some positive impacts against climate change in our community. We're a 19,000 square foot place that, as you can see behind me, is largely granite from my hometown north of here. And it's hard to heat. We have this steam boiler that is older than all of us put together, and it's ginormous, and it costs us about 10 grand a year just to keep the bugger running. And that's not the fuel, that's just the repairs, the steam piping and all that go along with it. So we had a big job before our hands. So we did this grant. We engaged a few different providers that were geothermal contractors that could actually put a system in and do a study like this. And we picked one that we picked Larry Lassard from Achieve Renewables, and we were really thrilled. He happens to lead, I found out later, the New England Organization for Geothermal Networks, I guess. And really nice guy with a lot of experience, and he had just finished a geothermal network install in Salem at the Willows. And the Willows is a coastal community that's kind of wicked old, and they have a school there, and they wanted to network a whole bunch of buildings in their school, both new and old. And so little did I know, but the geothermal profile of this area, the bedrock and all the rock profile, is synonymous in this whole area. So that site that he had stands probably 5, 6, 7 miles from here. And even so, there's no difference in the geology underneath our feet. And so their actual finished project was indicative of what the kind of conditions they would have here. So our study went forth, and we thought we were going to have a really hard time of selling this to our neighbors. And in some cases we did, but not many. We thought the hardest sell was going to be to the local housing authority, which is a quasi-governmental organization that's both half state and half community, the Salem Housing Authority. And they were our most enthusiastic supporter of the concept. They have some high-rise buildings on our street, 2 of them to my right and 1 to my left. And they have about 7 or 8 floors in each, and they're wicked old and have old systems in them and such. And so they're ripe for renewal, and so the timing was good, and they were wholeheartedly invested in this concept. So instantly we had a boost from the housing authority, and we started to go out and meet with all of our neighbors. And we literally knocked on doors, and it was this kind of odd conversation. What's this parish priest doing on my door? And why is he talking about global network, geothermal networks, and how this can help us? And once we got over that hump, we realized that we were just folks, having a conversation about some really impactful things that could benefit them, whether they were green-minded or not. This was just bottom line going to be beneficial. And so the conversations continued, and they've led up to now to be 24 buildings across 20 property owners in our vicinity. And what this study had to deal with was to actually not only talk to them about what the concept of what this would be, but then investigate each one of those sites and what their boilers look like, what kind of supply do they have, what kind of fuel do they consume, you name it. They were inside to walk over their boilers and their electrical systems, and it was kind of a deep dive into 24 buildings. And some of them there's a bank in there that has a lot of heat that they have to get out of their building because they have computers running all the time and such, and so there's a heavy air conditioning load, so they're cooling dominant. And then there are places like the housing authority, which are heat dominant, And what I learned in this whole process was that you needed to have diversity of that kind of dominance. And so in order to build a complementary system, you need to have a little of both all around, sprinkled around. And so in the end, we had these great conversations with a bunch of neighbors that are willing to consider this concept. And one of the biggest neighbors that we engaged with and were supported by was the city of Salem itself. And at first, I think they were more like, all right, keep your enemies closer than your friends so that you know what they're doing, kind of thing, that old refrain. And we want to really keep tabs on what this guy's up to, because we're not quite sure we know where he's going. And now they're part and parcel of our whole effort, and we're writing grants together, and we're planning together and doing this whole initiative. So it's really been a beautiful growth of trust and of collaboration across a variety of neighbors, both residential, museums, through nonprofits and such, and for-profit businesses and governmental agencies. So it's been a lot of fun to get to know a lot of people and to interact with them and to really work on a common theme. So I'll step back for a minute and tell you that our project is actually twofold. It's a geothermal network in our community stemming from the church and going around, and there's a large, Leanne, you remember the Salem Common, because you told me you lived in Salem. There's a large common in the center of Salem, and that would actually be the site that we think would make the most sense to have the bore field, where there would be some 300-400 holes drilled into this field, which is a common and in a residential neighborhood surrounded by Federalist homes and in the center of Salem, and that this would be a logical site to do it. There are other sites as well. That's not the only one, but that's the one that's probably got the largest amount of land in one place. And the nice thing about a geothermal network is that you get that site back as soon as they're done. It returns to being the common again. And there are no cows there anymore, but a ton of people use it all the time, and there's all kinds of activities there. So the public would want it back, and they would indeed get it back. And that's the beauty about these networks. So, but our part, as I mentioned, our project is two parts. So we've termed it heaven and earth, because the earth part is the geothermal network, and the heaven part is a solar community microgrid, where we would have the church and other entities in Salem be tied together through a microgrid of generated solar power with battery storage, so that we're creating climate resilience hubs throughout the city that can help low-income folk deal with excessive heat and excessive cooling when the power's out, and we would always be on. So that's our Heaven and Earth project. At first, it was just thermal network, and then when we partnered with, and I refer you to a great entity that is Clean Energy Solutions Incorporated out of Boston, and they have they're a for-profit firm that has done a tremendous amount of pro bono work for us and for others to ensure that there are green solutions for Justice 40 neighborhoods around the Northeast. And they've done a great job and been a great partner to us. They sought us out once they heard about us and have been partnering with us ever since. And so every 3 weeks, this body of people representing the city and neighbors and engineers and people just proactively interested in green technologies meets together to put this forward. We completed our study, and it's available on the HEAT site. I think Bernie's going to put this on a link at the bottom of something, or in the chat or something, and so that you could check out the study. It's not a short one. They did a pretty comprehensive study there for us. And now we're moving beyond the study to how we can bring this into reality, both the geothermal network and the solar microgrid. Some of this has to bear with the church itself and other entities. So what I'm about to share with you about retrofitting applies to every building that would be foreseeable in the study. Because we're in New England, where the housing stock and the building stock is older than all of us put together. And so therefore it needs a heck of a lot of work to bring it up to green code, if you will, and not a code per se, but into a climate resilient, accepting of heat capabilities. And so that's a big challenge for a place like us. I mean, I'm in a 193-year-old building. And so we are doing all that we can to retrofit this building. Mass Save was just in here last week and blew an insulation in the building I'm talking with you from. And we're already taking other steps in our other parts of our building so that we're going to be an efficient place for that heat to be, and we can actually be participating in this climate resilience concept pretty effectively. So there's the work of retrofitting, there's the work of community dialogue and engagement with other folks to bring them up to speed. And, geothermal doesn't roll off the tongue, and it's not something that a ton of people know about. And so it's a deep conversation every time we engage in this. But people are truly amazed that there's something so efficient and so available if we can just tap into it through a variety of means, both public and private, as the case may be. And therein lies one of the problems that we encounter, and that is, what do you do if you don't have a cooperative utility? And in Massachusetts, we have two utilities. We have the one that largely you all have, which is Eversource, and they've actually been pretty proactive with doing a study in Framingham, I'm sure you know about, and have expanded that study. And then we have National Grid, which is the provider of gas in our area. And National Grid has not been as proactive as Eversource, and has actually canceled a project that they had and scaled down to a smaller project in Dorchester, and kind of putting along with this thing. But the time for putting is long since over, in my opinion. And so we're exploring the concept of, what if we did this without the utility? What if we became the utility? And that is an enormous undertaking and a pretty daunting concept, but we're looking at how this could actually pan out. And would we have enough entities to help us work this out, and then financing to help us fund it? And how do we cost it out so that people can pay an appropriate amount of money for the service provided? And how do we pay the people that are giving, if private property like this, our parking lot could be used as part of the site for the wells, the well field? And if that's the case, well, how is the church compensated for the heat that it shares to the system? So it's very complex, but we're working through all of this, and this team is amazing. And we have already applied for about $1 million in grants. We've received $500,000 so far, roughly. And one of the grants that we have just received is about $250K, and then it leads to the next level is $2.2 million, and the third level, if you get it, is $50 million. So there's some significant play out there, grant funding wise. But we're not leaving it all to grants either. We're looking at finance options and how do you finance these kind of projects. We're working with a couple of universities that are helping us to do some of those, that insight into this. And we're working with local entities, both the city and of course the state and everything in all of this. We don't want to be not collaborative with the utilities. We want to, in fact, they have been supportive to a degree. They helped us with a grant writer for a grant we wrote probably almost a year ago now, which they didn't have to do, and it was their idea and impetus to do. Very much appreciated. And I don't rule out the fact that we could be collaborating with a utility on this. But it doesn't look that promising, if you ask me. And so we're having to be inventive and kind of create our own imagination for the future. So suffice to say, it's a complicated project. It's one we're really excited about, and one, though, that is moving slowly ahead. And I want to stop because I don't want to drag on for you, but I just want to tell you that it's so good to hear that you all are interested in these networks. And one of the things that I hold great hope for is what the Commonwealth of Massachusetts legislature is looking at. I understand there's a bill under consideration that would actually tell the gas utilities in the state where you wish to expand gas service, you need to do it with geothermal. where you wish to replace gas service because there's leaks and stuff, you need to do it with geothermal. In other words, your gas network has gotten as big as it's going to get, and it's now going to start to get smaller, and we're asking you to come into this business. And because you already have half of it down by laying pipe, now you just got to get used to drilling and running heat exchangers and the like. So anyhow, we're hopeful that that kind of legislation, progressive legislation, will be in the offing in the future, near future, and that it'll help us collaborate more fully with utilities to make this a reality. I truly dream of a future where these are all over the place, and this is just like an erector set that's just been extended and extended and extended all over the neighborhoods. So.
Well, thank you so much, Rev Ives. That is inspiring, but even more of great practical value in laying out how this might all work. I have a lot of questions. I'm sure other people have other questions. I'll just start things off with, so if a utility is not participating in the way it did in Framingham, where it's taking ratepayer funds and doing pretty much all the work, what's the role that you would like to see the utility play in the Salem thermal energy network?
Well, ideally, we'd love to say, in this area, we'd have to work with all their customers and get them all in agreement and say, we're going to stop putting gas in these pipes and let's put geothermal energy in these pipes. And after we do the drilling to connect them, because they have rights of way in the streets that they control. And so we have to go through streets to do what we want to do because we want to communicate this network in a neighborhood. So inevitably, we're going to bump up against each other. So that would be ideal. It's a huge ask, but that's the kind of, I don't think we should have limits. We're horses without those things on the side of our eyes, so we can see everything going on and know what's coming. So that we can truly work together to build a future that's different and productive.
So I want to be sure to give time for other people to, Susan.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Reverend, for this excellent presentation of your work. I also have authority that I would love to, and they're very geothermal. So I've talked with the director of our housing authority about this, and I'm working on the neighborhoods as well. But one of the other things is in Wallingford, they did do geothermal with the housing authority, Wallingford, Connecticut. And I am very, very pleased. Here, it's harder to get some traction because of the low density population we have here, lack of access to, highways and that sort of thing. So we're really shut out from the rest of the state in so many ways. But at least my district is. And I just really love the idea of having in the legislature that when the gas lines are being fixed or when they're being added, that geothermal the formula. And I think that's great because you're including them. So they won't be fighting it much as they would be as they might be right now, included with this process. The other thing is I'd love to see how you included Eversource with the process, them helping grants and working with you. I think that the relationship seems to be working better in Massachusetts than in Connecticut.
I'll just say that in here for National Grid, it both has the electric side and the gas side. And the electric side, I happen as a homeowner in a town. I grew up in Rockport, Mass, and I wanted to add EV charging stations in my town, and so I started working with the town to kind of do this. And National Grid said, well, we'll not give you one, we'll give you 18, but you got to go through these hoops. And so we did it. We got this project done. And so a relationship was built with some folks internal to National Grid that had spillover into this project for geothermal networks. Still on the electric side, not on the gas side. So they have been very, very supportive. I think they've been, everybody, they're scratching their head because this is like getting them off their footings off, because they're like, okay, well, now we got to worry about what this priest's doing. And but we've tried to be very cooperative and collaborative with this. I mean, we don't want this to be confrontational. We want this is a solution we should all be working around. And but of course there's money on the table and at stake, and that's a big deal. So
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I have Eastern Connecticut State University here with a Sustainability Institute, and also UConn is up the street, and they are also focused on more geothermal. We have geothermal at our universities in both places, and I'm hoping that that will reach communities in which they're located. Thank you again.
Thank you. Bernie.
Thank you, Reverend Ives. A question, you mentioned money. Could you talk about, that saying, a 1,000-mile journey starts with a single step. What was your first step? And that's kind of this group that we've formed that here we're trying to get some study money. How much money did you need the very first step you took? And what did that grant look like?
Yeah, it was the first step actually preceded that, and it was just the dream. It was just being willing to talk about it and have people listen. And so I cannot emphasize enough just the power of you all gathering weekly or monthly, whatever it is, to talk about this. There is power in that. And so by all means, keep at it, because it leads to things. And because those conversations then led to the funding. That's how we met HEAT. I mean, I didn't even know HEAT existed. And all of a sudden, somebody knew I was on this topic of geothermal. Oh, you ought to meet Angie from HEAT. And boom, the conversation from there. I showed up to the HEAT conference. I guess I was invited, but I don't think they expected me to come, at MIT this past winter. And it was a TENS conference, and it was wild. It was very, very impactful. I learned a lot, because I'm not a scientist or anything, and made a lot of connections that have further opened the door. So the grants have been part of those connections. Right now, we're working closely with MIT and Salem State University. So we've got a variety of leads we work on with grants together and CESI has brought grants to the table. I didn't comment on this, and perhaps it's worth not commenting on it and just moving beyond it, because that's our choice. But the administration, of course, has not been helpful. And so, the climate's changed. One of our grants, there was a threat of arrest if we went for it and all this stuff. Crazy stuff. Just crazy. And but we do it anyways. And I think the power of the heart to dream this into reality is really, really important in all of this.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And you may not be a scientist, but Leanne Jacobson is. So
Go for it, Leanne.
I just thank you for sharing your experience and thoughts. That was really amazing to hear, and like Peter said, very inspiring. I'm thinking about the utility and the challenges that you've experienced, what you've heard from them. Do you think that the biggest hurdles are near term, sort of the initial financing and the getting decisions made, the sort of complexity of the project, or is it the long-term profitability and gas is just more profitable?
Well, we're hopeful the state is going to kind of influence that math, that calculus. And if I know the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, they're going to push pretty hard. They're already pushing pretty hard against the utilities in this. And I think they're going to, because they had pressure to do, that Framingham thing didn't come out of nowhere. The Commonwealth funded it and said, we want you to start doing these things. And so anyhow, there are many complicated things on the horizon, and not the least of which is funding for it, so we're continually trying to fundraise for this, then the financing and the packaging. I mean, National Grid, Eversource, I don't believe has yet come up with how they're going to charge consumers in Framingham for the gas they're getting, or I should say the heat they're getting from not from gas. So, it's a big problem, or big enough at least that they haven't come up with a solution yet. So there are many things to resolve. But I guess maybe the beauty of not being a scientist is that I don't let that deter us. I guess if I was a scientist, I'd worry a lot more about all those things. But being a priest has its advantages, and we just keep plowing ahead. But we do have folks in the room who are deeply involved in all of those conversations. And each month when we meet, we're just pushing the ball a little bit further in various directions at once. And we have found different grants that have been still coming through for this. And it's funny, I guess the terminology, if there was a whole thing on nomenclature at this conference I went to for the TENS, and if you word it correctly, you have less resistance from the federal government on certain funding streams for TENS. So, good Lord. But, okay. So we'll word it that way, I guess.
Well, not seeing anybody else's hands up, I'm going to ask another question. So we know that the technology it's not completely mature, but it's pretty mature. Mm-hmm. It's really about the business model and the
Correct.
Regulatory environment and all of that sort of stuff. What have you been learning about what the business model has to be? How viable is a business model that it probably involves paying customers, people on the loop, paying over many years, 30 years, 40 years, maybe something in that vein, for the expensive infrastructure with a lot of the fuel, namely the heat from the ground, being kind of free. We also need electricity. But what have you been learning about the business model?
Yeah, a couple of things. One of them is that time is our friend in this because the systems last, their duration is about 100 years.
Wow.
So, you can amortize that really beautifully. And of course, utilities are very good at amortizing high costs over a span of years, right? They do that as a going concern when they're just putting up phone poles and stuff. And so another thing is that, there's been a huge push for air source heat pumps, but air source heat pumps consume a lot of electricity. And they're efficient, but they're not as efficient as geothermal, which does not consume a lot of electricity to run. So one of the attractive things to a utility is if they can lower the overall consumption of electricity on the grid, because a lot of people are on geothermal networks, then the demand for the electrical service goes down. They don't have all those, the peak days aren't as much a concern, and they can there's a benefit there that they can have that has a financial benefit to them. So that's one of the things working in the favor of geothermal. I've learned that much. And that, so for instance, right now at the church itself, this could be, so I'm 60, right? And at some point, the church says you got to get out at 72. So I've got 12 years left to fiddle with this, and I want it done long before that, but it may not be right now. So what do we do right now? And do we throw money at air source heat pumps that you're basically throwing away once you get a geothermal network in place? Or do you go to any variety of this two major forms we've recently been looking at geothermal heat pumps that are mid-steps, or water source heat pumps that are mid-steps to geothermal that would be compatible? So there's all these financial decisions to make. And but the closer you get to geothermal, the more efficient you get overall, and the more efficient you get as far as grid efficiency, the amount of electricity demand. It's got a tremendous impact there. So those have been big playing decisions in some of this costing out of how this is going to work and what are the benefits, both to the utility in the long run, how they're going to run this.
It strikes me that what you're learning will apply to us also here in Connecticut. So it's just great what you're up to. Bernie.
Speaking of learning, and a question in the chat, could you mention the partners that you worked with by function? So they were an engineer or they were a community organizer, and by name, so we can potentially darken their doorstep and.
Yeah. So Clean Energy Solutions Incorporated has been, they came initially on the solar microgrid side, but they've expanded and just been a very good helping agent. And their founder just died, a lovely, lovely, lovely man. And but the team continues, and his name was David Dayton. And David had 30 years of doing this work. The engineering, Larry Lassard from Achieve Renewables is the lead engineer. He subcontracted in the grant to B to Q, letter B, number 2, and Q. And they have a team led by Laura Dias and Paul Banks, who have been very helpful in all of this. And then we have local folks like Pat Gazemba, who is a Massachusetts phenomenon of her own right. She's a retired professor from Salem State University and a green. She established SAFE, which is Salem's Alliance for the Environment, back in the 90s, and just a major advocate, so an organizer, is fully involved and engaged with this. The city itself, and then St. Peter's Church, various parishioners from St. Peter's. So those are the big players in all of this.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Susan.
Thank you again. And to kind of emphasize what you were saying, I think that maybe one link might be to emphasize the fact that everything I hear in Connecticut is that there's not enough for expansion of different types of businesses. And this would have increase energy access, because if we are able to make geothermal more available, then that would make access to energy more available, help with expansion of our business. Also, I was glad to hear you talk about the geothermal heat pumps, because they last much longer and are more efficient than the electric pumps. And of course, using electric heat pumps, it takes from the grid. That analysis is excellent. Thanks so much for that.
Yep. I wanted to mention that we're looking at this in a variety of ways. So we are looking at effluent and what is the heat tapping resource of effluent that we could use that goes by the church itself and the neighborhood and wherever else this is installed. So we're looking. There are a variety of ways to do geothermal. We're on an estuary, so we're close. I can walk. We're half a mile to the ocean. And so when they drill down, they encounter seawater, but seawater itself can be, it has a constant temperature at a certain depth, and so there's all these different things that you can take into consideration with these things, and we're looking at them all.
That's great. Every place is a little bit different, so making adjustments based on what you have in your area, or whether it's natural gas pipes or sewage treatment pipes, or how your soils are, or where you have different waterways. As I also sit on the inland wetlands and water courses, and so I always look at those issues as well. And we have a lake that's underneath the city of Romantic. So one of my first thoughts back in the day was, before I had a partner there, Representative Winter, was that, hey, we have the perfect place to do geothermal network all throughout the city of Willimantic. We do sit on a lake here. And I know Eastern Connecticut State University has taken advantage of that, but also if we can take advantage of the existing infrastructure with the sewage treatment pipes, there's another opportunity for us to be able to figure out how it works. I don't know, I'm not a scientist. I don't know how it all works, but I'm going to try and find out. But I do appreciate your work and your comments. Thank you so much.
Ian, please go ahead. And you're on mute. Go ahead.
Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for the excellent presentation. And I didn't realize you were down in Brooklyn. That's half my family's from. So nice that you're down here too. I'm just wondering. You've probably gotten into this, and I apologize if it didn't get through my thick skull here. But in terms of the business model here, it seems like within the thermal energy network, everybody is, you know, contributing potentially differing amounts of cooling and or heating to that network. Is the cost recovery for the utility primarily just based on that distribution infrastructure, and then the energy itself is, you're not necessarily paying for the energy itself? It seems like it would be difficult to sort of meter or reconcile that. Maybe not. So can you say anything else about that? Thank you.
Well, I know much of that is above my pay grade, but I will say this. I think that's why the utility has been taking so long to kind of figure out how they're going to charge for this, because you know, it's a brand new concept and a different than, you know, it's not a substance like gas that they could meter, or maybe they'll be able to meter therms from the ground. I don't know, but anyhow, I will say that the complementarity of the system. So the church generates a lot of heat. If I air condition this church, I would be expelling a lot of heat out into the air. And in this system, that would be captured and put into the ground by the geothermal network. Or before it goes to the ground, it would be going to a place that's calling for heat that may not have enough at that moment. And so that's where the efficiency comes in. You know, the geothermal energy is ultimately the most efficient form of energy there is right now. And then you further make it more efficient by sharing it and channeling the excess heat from one place to another. So that bank I mentioned that has to cool down their computers even in the middle of January, that heat goes to the housing of the elderly, where there's a whole bunch of tenants calling for 80-degree room temperature in their apartments or something. So it's this fluidity of the system to be in sync with itself, which really helps with that. So it's really cool. And you know, the ground itself, the bedrock, acts as a battery and just stores that heat that you reject down through the pipes. You know, the pipes do a circuit. So they bring forth 50-degree temperature water or solution that goes into the system, and then they bring it back at maybe higher temperatures later, and that's just stored in the rock. And you take it out later when you need it. So it's just an amazing concept and really efficient.
Thank you.
I have another question, which is, can you expand a little bit on the solar battery microgrid, how that's envisioned right now, how it integrates with the geothermal system, et cetera?
So one of the geothermal networks obviously need electricity to run. You know, you got to pump that fluid from the ground up. You got to move it around. So there's some energy, electrical energy that's used to do that. And so there is cost associated with that. And so the beauty of a solar microgrid or having solar panels on your roof is that you offset that cost and dramatically reduce it or eliminate it by producing your own power to do that. The solar microgrid is meant to be not only doing that, which I just said, so offsetting the electrical consumption of the church, but also routing any excess into large capacity battery storage so that there's ample supply in the event of a power outage that the church can then be, and other places like the church, so there may be a dozen of these in the city of Salem, say, strategically distributed throughout the city, that have been both willing to become solar generating places and also battery storage places and places of reception for the people who are excessively hot or excessively cold to be made comfortable and safe during a long-term disaster. So if you have a hurricane, the hurricanes are getting larger now, the hurricane sweeps up through New England, knocks down power everywhere. In theory, the church would have power because its battery supply would be up and running. Huge humidity follows a hurricane. The folks that would be able to come to the church and be in a safe place and be cool while they're and charge their cell phones and whatever else they need to do and run their oxygen machines for the elderly or whatever, while they're waiting for the infrastructure to be restored, or the opposite in cold weather. And having a variety of places like that throughout the city that share and channel that electricity, because there'll be even excess after you've filled up the consumption for the church for on day one and filled up its battery, there's still excess. It goes to the microgrid to help the other entities do that. And we're a bilingual church, a multicultural church that works with very low income people. And there's a neighborhood called the Point neighborhood, which is always the immigrant neighborhood in Salem. It's just historically been that. And so it's low income, it's impoverished. So we want the RECs that come from our generating of solar microgrid energy produces RECs. We want that to offset the electrical consumption of the ratepayers that are low income and live in those communities. So we're trying to target the good effort created to help the low income folks. So that's just what we're all about as a church, and the other entities that we're working with seem to embrace it as well. And the concept is just let's help one another, and especially the marginalized. And so,
unless there are other questions, I'm going to thank you, Reverend Ives, for this, for your incredible work, for spending some time with us. I'm sure we're going to be in touch with some other questions, perhaps, and I'm just taken aback by the work that you're doing and how much it helps us to envision where we need to be going.
Well, I'm so thrilled to have the opportunity to talk with you. I encourage you to look up the TENS conference when it happens.
Yes.
And because it was wonderful, and great connections were made there, and the folks at Heat are amazing. So I don't know, Angie in particular, Escobar has been tremendous gatekeeper for us. So I encourage you to talk with them.
We spoke with Angie just a couple of days ago, and she will likely be our next speaker in September. So point taken. So thank you very much. I think we have time for Leanne. Thank you so much. For Leanne to give a short presentation about some DOE case studies. So without further ado, take it away, Leanne. I hope we.
Sorry, just taking a minute there. Is it?
I just sprung that on you, so. Okay, well, I'm glad you're able to share. Go ahead.
The Department of Energy is highlighting a few case studies on their website. So this sort of reinforces some of the ideas that Reverend Ives just shared with us. These case studies are from all over the country, and they highlight different types of projects, and they include contact information for someone who supported that project. So if you are considering a project that includes a university or a corporate campus or a greenhouse, this is one way that you can find information, an example specific to the type of anchor project you might include in your community thermal energy network. These projects are not explicitly community thermal energy networks, but they include the types of projects that could serve as an anchor for that network. So I'm just going to highlight a few examples and to illustrate sort of the variety of projects that are out there. One of the projects is from New York. It's a retrofit. It's apartments, so high density units. They found that actually using a decentralized system saved them money compared to a single central loop. This is because it had a smaller footprint and less piping. They found that they saved 40% of their annual energy, and the key motivation for their project was resilience and cost saving. So one of the things we learned from Angie is that really identifying the motivating factor for the community that you're working with is fundamental to that project's success, to make sure everyone's aligned and working towards that goal together. In terms of the numbers here, the project cost $1.7 million. They got a rebate from New York State. They found that the project saved them $24,000 a year. And this is, again, for a project that included 72 apartments, The boreholes were 250 feet deep, which is, I think, similar to what we would need in Connecticut. And again, it was decentralized, so 9 closed loops, separate loops. That first project was a retrofit. The alternate here is a new build. So this is another, oh, I'm sorry, not apartments. This is single family homes built in 2013 in Prospect, Kentucky. It's an absolutely massive development. Their motivation was to reduce noise in bulk, given the sort of constraints of the project and the area that they wanted to build in. They found that the project saved money by increasing efficiency and lowering maintenance costs. And one of their key points was that connecting the builders with geothermal heat pump distributors was really instrumental to success, getting them sort of connected early on in the process. In terms of the numbers, it took 6 to 7 years to get a payback. The project included over 1,000 homes, and someone asked this question in the chat. These homes were very close together, so 6 feet apart. The project also included 500,000 square feet of commercial space, and the boreholes were a bit deeper here, so 350 feet. A closer example is in Massachusetts, in Amherst, this historic inn. This was a retrofit where they were converting from a gas-powered boiler. The geothermal heat supported hot water as well as heating and cooling the unit. And here, again, efficiency, but one of the key points was reducing maintenance. Oh, and I think I forgot to emphasize back here that for this new build, one of the unexpected benefits is that it helped sell the units. Buyers were fairly intrigued by the geothermal technology that they installed. One of the unexpected benefits, or sort of another benefit that they got, whether or not it was their primary intention here, was redundancy. So when the gas-powered boiler went out, the whole unit had no heat. But because there were multiple heat pumps for this inn, they appreciated the redundancy. If one heat pump went out, they were still able to maintain heat in their inn using the other heat pumps. So this project served 49 rooms in addition to 8,000 square feet of event space. There were 47 boreholes. These were quite deep, 500 feet. There were 5 heat pumps, so this is the redundancy. And I guess they were able to achieve sort of beyond the standard in terms of the efficiency for each room. I believe this is the last example. So this is a public school projects in Seattle. And this idea first started in 2004. The first project construction started in 2006. And by 2004, these projects have been so successful that for the Seattle public school system, geothermal is now the gold standard, and it's what they're putting in all of their remodels, all of their new builds for schools in that area. The motivation here was, again, efficiency and also reduced maintenance, which is something else that I think Reverend Ives mentioned. In terms of the numbers, this group of projects, which sort of continued after the first school in 2006, included 15 retrofits, so 15 existing schools for new constructions, for new schools. Boreholes were 150 to 350 feet. They needed 90 to 100 boreholes per school. And overall, they're finding that there's a 30 to 77% reduction in energy efficiency. So took a little bit longer, but that was just a quick overview of some of the types of projects that we can use to inspire us in Connecticut.
Well, thank you, Leanne. That was really helpful. And we're not alone in trying to do this. As a matter of fact, we're not alone. And there's lots of help out there for us to understand what this is all about. I guess that's about it. I'll tell you that I think that next month, at the end of September, our next meeting will feature, I'm blanking on her name.
Angie
Angie Alberto from Heat, and maybe somebody else will will join us. We have been finding that there are so many interesting people, so many knowledgeable people about all this, that it's going to be hard to fit them all in one at a time each month. So thinking about how to deal with that. There will be a recording. We did make a recording of this, and yeah, a lot more to say. I'll just say this, that as Reverend Ives observed, the next step, what do you do with these, the feasibility study, the design development study? It's going to be a long runway to actually build these. But the feasibility studies envisioned in the Thermal Energy Network grant program, you have to do those. You can't start talking to organizations that provide grants or government or utilities. If you don't have the feasibility studies, and even better, some of the design development studies. So this is really important, what we're trying to do here. And I'll stop there, but Susan, if you want to have the last word, go ahead.
Not the last word, but just thank you very quickly. That, and also one of the things that I need as a legislator is the group. I need the feasibility study and the plan. So that's how I get legislation through. That's how we work to get the money to do these things. So, and also I want to mention the Green Bank is available as well to do these types of utility projects, or with the right plan and the right studies, we might be able to get the Green Bank to help us out. So thank you again very, very much. This work, it means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And as I indicated, we have a lot of speakers, but we will get to Robert Zanetsky. I'm looking forward to talking with him. So, and I appreciate your recommending him. Great. Well, with that, I think let's get back to our sunny afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.